I am honored today to have my friend Brandon Hauser as our guest. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So let me introduce Brandon. So Brandon and I are friends for 10-ish years. Brandon is a jack of all trades. He's a diving instructor, retired school teacher, police officer, works with fire departments. And actually, the school teaching stuff was very surprising me. I had forgotten that. You had mentioned that one other day when we went diving. So, Brandon, thanks for doing this show with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I enjoy about Brandon is I want to talk diving today with you, and I want to talk police officer stuff and that. And then you and I, we always are talking politics, whether it's on Facebook, whether you're giving trouble to me or my wife on Facebook, whatever's the occasion. And let me ask you this: do you think it's harder to be friends with people and talk politics than it used to be?
In just my opinion, I think it depends on, and I don't want to jump right into left versus right, but because they both sides get triggered very easily. But I think a lot of it depends on, yes, it is very difficult to be friends with people on different sides of the political spectrum if people cannot kind of find a common ground. My uncle is a retired Army veteran, and I don't remember his rank, but he was an accountant. And the gentleman is absolutely a genius. He speaks 5 or 6 different languages. Worked at the Pentagon for a while, and him and I have discussions for hours on Facebook. And he's extremely left, extremely liberal. He's from Colorado, and there's not an argument won, but we both understand. And I don't really want to, down people for their education or their beliefs, but it seems like I'd say the more mature people. And I'm in my 40s. Gary's in his 70s, but it just seems like the older you are and the more you live through the political spectrum, the easier it is to talk about the difference between left and right and get along. So we still meet for Thanksgiving. We meet for dinner every now and then. He went to he was in Raleigh for a while. My aunt's a retired nurse, combat nurse anesthetist. She was in the Army as well, and she is a tremendously huge Clinton fan, and her and I can have a very civil discussion at the dinner table, and hug, take pictures, everything else at the end of the day, and it's done and over with at the end of the day. But I think it's very difficult now.
I think it's a function too of having being able to see the other side. There's 2 sides to issues a lot of times, and you can't take yourself too seriously sometimes. It's hard not to with some of the divisive stuff and some of the stuff going on. So I see that too. Let's circle back to that. Let me ask you this. There's many hats that you and I wear. My second job is as a assistant instructor and a tour guide at Bonne Terre Mine. And I think now, are you my boss now or something? With your new title?
I mean, I've always been your boss, Gary, but.
You mean, except when we're underwater. Don't you wish you dove like me? Don't you wish you looked like me underwater?
There is, I think I've done, I don't remember, 7 or 8 different video shoots. But there's one of you coming out of an area that we call the keyhole that is probably the most impressive out of all the videos we've ever shot. And it's just you coming out of that hole. So, yes, I wish I could be as wonderful. Hey, remember that time we were in tech class together and you screwed up our entire deco time with my lift bag and your lift bag and you messed it all up?
I probably did. Remember how many times I had to save you in that class too, and show you how to do deco stops going up. Remember that?
Oh my God, Gary, there was way too many. I can't remember that much.
No. What's your strangest so for the viewers, can you so Bonne Terre Mine? People don't people know about it, but people don't know about it. Bonne Terre. One of the reasons why Brandon and I are really friends. We give each other a lot of shit. I don't want to say shit on Facebook Live, so I'll just say trouble. We give each other a lot of trouble from time to time, all in good fun. Brandon's an amazing diver. He is an instructor. Bonne Terre Mine is in Bonne Terre, Missouri. It's an old lead mine that's flooded, and people don't know this, but it's one of the top dive destinations in the United States. It's every year it's ranked one of the top dive destinations, one of the coolest things to see in Missouri. We have people traveling any weekend. I'm diving on any weekend. We have people, now this is pre-COVID, we had more people from more places, but we have people from all over the United States, from other countries. They've read about Bonne Terre Mine. It's a destination dive place. Brandon and I are both on staff there. Little introduction. Brandon, why do you like being a staff dive member or dive leader at Bonne Terre Mine? Why do you keep doing it after these years?
Well, I started in 2005 at the mine. I started diving in 1986 with the Boy Scouts, and my original certification was the YMCA. And I live in Illinois.
A lot about your diving. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So I grew up in Illinois, and there was no place to dive unless it was either up north or some rock quarries or some different areas. But when I got married in 2001, I moved over here, and I was in Bonne and wanted to go back through the open water course. And I did that in the December 2004 and joined staff in 05. And I absolutely fell in love with the place. And I got into diving a lot of trails. I was diving every weekend. I didn't have kids at the time, so I had a lot more freedom. But, I love being here. And if this was a place where I was going to live and raise my family, then I had to have a place to dive because we're not near the ocean, the Gulf, or any Caribbean diving at all. And I got into helping our senior staff and our director of training in teaching a lot of classes. And I actually loved the teaching aspect more than just the regular diving, the trails and everything. So another one of our staff members, Josh Cody, him and I were kind of at the same level, and he was only there a couple months before me. And he started out, we kind of went different paths where he went on to explore the mine, learn upper trails, and do a whole lot of stuff and explore different areas of the mine. And I stayed teaching classes, which usually our classes are the first weekend of the month in our confined water and pool class, and then the second weekend we go to the mine. So those 2 weekends out every month, I was at the shop or in the mine diving with the class. And it's just it really is a top 10 National Geographic dive destination, and I absolutely love it. I've never been to any other place like it, and I've dove in some other mines. I live in Farmington, and there's a little area down south called Marquand, and Mine Lamont, there's an old open pit mine, and it's not the same. I mean, it just isn't the same.
And I've done both. I don't do as much instruction. I do more toward leading trails, but I've done a lot of with Josh too. You've done some exploring too. We're getting calls on our live stream. What's the craziest or?
Are you there?
I am still here.
Okay, let me grab the youngest son here's phone call. Hey Cooper, I'm on Carter Street facing the school.
So
bye.
Good job. And you're a dad. You do soccer stuff all the time. You're coaching soccer. You work. You support your family. You're a police officer. You do part-time police officer, firework. So you have your hands always doing something like me. So that's what attracts you to the teaching. What's the difference? Explain to the people Well, so everybody knows you can become an open water diver through West End Diving. You'll do classes, you'll do pool classes, and you do your open water dives in the mine. The mine's underground, but it's an open water diving environment where you do open water classes, and we take divers, open water divers, all the time. Every weekend, we'll be diving this weekend, so you can come down if you're an open water diver. Doug and Kathy Juergens at West End Diving, and we can give you that information. What's the difference? You and I are professional divers. What's the difference between a professional diver and a casual diver?
Sure. So a lot of people, the average, and this is just kind of a statistic for scuba divers, most people dive about 5 times a year on average. We dive, last year I logged over 550 dives, and a lot of it has to do with our teaching. That's a lot of it there. But to be a dive professional, everybody I think is professional at certain things they do, but the certification for a dive pro, I'm going to hold my phone here because it's still not illegal in Missouri to be on the phone and drive. But
I love it.
So,
and it's also our certification. So professional, and while you're doing that, let me jump in. So professional divers, we have certifications. We're certified. We're trained how to handle every situation or most situations we confront. We're trained how to handle stress and rescue of other divers. We have certifications with organizations. For instance, every 2 years, we have to make sure our CPR is up to date, as well as our O2 administration. And we have different certifications. That's generally as a professional diver. At Bonne Terre, it's more rigorous because it is also. Sorry for 1 second. For Bonne Terre, it's more rigorous just because it is also we do go under rock. It's a darker environment. We encounter situations you would encounter in open water. What else am I missing?
Well, there's the 2 biggest agencies in scuba certification is PADI and SSI. We are a PADI SSI shop, but I'm an open water instructor through SSI, and basically the difference between like professional diver or professional status, I should say, is SSI used to have a certification called a dive control specialist, and that was very unique to SSI. I never really understood it, and I've been a dive con for many years, but when you make your dive control specialist certification, there's a lot of classes that goes along with that, plus just the amount of dives that you need to do to get that certification. But nobody else in the dive industry had any clue or any idea on what DiveCon really was, because SSI was the only people that did that. So they recently changed that about 1.5 years ago to a dive assistant instructor, which PADI is probably the biggest agency worldwide. And everybody looked at PADI for basically, you have assistant instructors, you have dive masters, you have master divers, and you have all these different levels. Well, SSI didn't have that. So now we're all on the same page as far as the industry is concerned, as far as the title goes. So a dive professional would be basically a master diver level, which is almost kind of the top level of your basic open water advanced divers. A dive master is different for each individual area. I know I go to Pensacola a lot diving, and the dive masters there are just open water divers, but they're dive masters because they are the safeties and the tenders that are in the water, so they're a dive master. They may not be a master diver level certification, but they are a dive master. So the difference is once you reach a certain level, you get a pro status. Like my open water number is really, really high, but my dive pro number is really low. It's like 64610, whereas my other certification is.
And there's different levels of certification for professionals as well. Teachers teach teachers, et cetera, et cetera. And there's also other certifications. So, for instance, I'm CAVE certified. So there's other ways you can go. There's also professional commercial divers, but that's not us. But cave diving has its own unique, and there's also people can be instructors and be professional divers, but they are not tech divers necessarily. And
Right.
you and I both have, in exploring our passion and pursuing our diving passion, we're both technical divers, and we're both have different. You're a full instructor. I have the assistant instructor dive control status. So, and the tech diving, what that is, it's really more advanced. It's where you're going underwater for long periods of time, and you'd have to do different decompression activities in order to get rid of the nitrogen in your body in order to be able to arrive at the top healthy. I got two diving questions. Well, here's a question: do you have to be a police officer to drive while you're on the phone or a Facebook Live show, or can you just does anybody do that?
Now, in the state of Missouri, anybody can do it. I'm not saying it's the brightest thing ever to do, but
you got to pick up your kids, and you agreed to do this with me. All right.
Yeah, that's one there. That's Cooper right there.
Hey, how you doing?
He's never really very shy, unless he's on the other side of my phone. But,
yeah, if your kid, he's not shy. I guarantee it. Just like my kids, but they'll never perform on demand. Tell me what's a crazy story from diving at the mine or otherwise you want to share with me? Short, quick story.
I mean, we don't have a lot of craziness that goes on. A lot of issues that happen are kind of self-initialized, in my opinion. Somebody that either doesn't enjoy the colder water or the wetsuit or something like that, or they just don't dive at all, and then they take 2 or 3 years off and then just come diving. But I mean, for me, one of the best things that I've ever done has been I got to take John Tudor and his daughter on a couple tours. And if you don't know, I'm not a humongous baseball fan, but he's a retired Cardinals pitcher, and he was actually a staff member for West End Diving back in the 80s. So that was probably one of the highlights for me.
Cool. I got all kinds of stories. As you said, most of it's not at the mine, but I mean, just different, just different stuff can happen. I'm going to answer this. So here's a question I wrote for you. I was thinking, what lessons have you learned in diving that you take in life? So think about that question. Let me answer it first, because you've been talking a lot and you're driving. So here's one of the things in cave diving that you learn is you don't take problems with you. So if you're on a dive and you encounter a problem, you lose a line, you're concerned about, you have a regulator failure, or you have you don't know what direction you're going, or if you have a failure or a condition, you lose a buddy, you do something. What you learn in diving, one of the things you learn in cave diving is you solve that problem before you go forward. You don't, unless it's a manageable problem, you don't take that forward with you. Because what happens is if you lose a line, or if you lose a buddy, or something happens in that type of a tough diving environment like a cave, what ends up happening is other problems happen and things cascade. So don't take a problem forward with you. It's just like diving in the mine. If we start seeing a diver who has issues, we're on them and we watch them, or we solve the problem and go and adapt. Because if you carry those forward, you can have issues. I guess the other thing I like that I've learned in diving that I apply in other areas of my life is task loading. Kind of like you want to like you're driving your kids right now and doing this and doing a million other things. The more you dive, the more you task load yourself, the more you're able to do. It becomes a fun and challenging thing rather than a limiting thing. What do you think, Brandon? Either do you agree with those, or what from diving have you taken into life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, like I said, it's not illegal to drive and be on the phone. It may not be the smartest thing ever. In fact, this one back here, if you can see, is Charlie. He's my oldest. He's just started driving, and I am on him constantly about reaching for his phone, grabbing for his phone, different things when I'm riding with him driving. So, and then, you're right. It is a task loading thing. My bread and butter job is I work for an insurance company as an adjuster. So I've got different tasks going on all day long. I'm always on the phone. I mean, this is my workstation here. You can see my iPad and stuff going on there. As a police officer, we've got MDTs, mobile data terminals. We're in those constantly. So there's always a stressor going on. And as a I'm a captain on our fire department down here. We've got MDTs in our fire trucks. So we're always looking at that information. Mobile data terminals, as they're referred to, do not always work the way they're supposed to. So that's another problem. We can't just stop the fire truck and figure out this computer crap. So we've got to either move on and learn how to do it without it, or,
And those are good points. And
you know what I mean? So you got to, right. And I mean, you got to work through the problems. I see a lot of younger.
So is that the task loading that you learn? Is that the task loading that you learn from diving that you apply other places?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I actually am an EVOC instructor, an emergency vehicle operations course instructor, and the best class I ever took at the Highway Patrol Academy was the emergency vehicle operations course. And you're in a patrol car and you're doing all this other stuff, and they put you underneath all this task loading stress. And it teaches you a lot on how to manage your life. But I mean, I see a lot of younger people that can only handle one thing at a time. And once you get out of high school, or you get out of college or the military or whatnot, life doesn't care how many things it throws at you at once. It just keeps coming. So it's a lot of difficulties for our younger people, in my opinion.
All right, can I move? All right, let me move more toward. All right, who should be paid? I'm going to go do some questions on our feeder. Who should be paid more? Cops, school teachers, dive professionals, or lawyers?
Well, I would preface that by saying that I've never seen a teacher go hungry. So I was a teacher. Now, I did work for St. Louis Special School District, so my pay was a lot higher than a lot of other school districts. But as a police officer, I've worked for minimum wage, and I've worked for the $30 an hour, and there's no consistency. But I think, and as an educator, I mean, I've got a graduate degree, and I think the more that you put into your own personal education, the more that you should get paid and compensated for that. But I also think that, that's 50-50 your merit in your job. If you do good in your job, you do well in your job, you succeed in your job, then you should be compensated for that. That's not always the case. A lot of people get paid the same whether they work a full day or not. So,
got it. Good.
Honestly, in my opinion, I think people in public service should be making a lot more money. But I started out graduating high school. I applied and got accepted into SLU. I was going to go through the law program, and then I got caught up in public safety. In Missouri, you actually cannot hold a bar card and be bonded and be a police officer. So you cannot be an attorney and a police officer at the same time in Missouri, and I just could never, ever give that up. But as far as an attorney getting
good answer, but your answer is wrong. Lawyers should get paid the most. Okay, moving
well,
to the
what I was going to say is, as an attorney, you guys are defending and trying to pick out the liability on somebody, especially as a personal injury attorney. And I mean, I would say that you and I probably are good friends enough that I would pick you as my attorney over anybody else. But I definitely think you earn the money that you earn, because you don't work just Monday through Friday 9 to 5. I call you on the weekends. I call you basically any time of the day, and you always answer my phone call. So when I'm done at 4:30, I'm done at 4:30.
Well, let me ask you another great. You're right. All right. So one of the you've been a police officer for what, 25 years?
Close to it, yeah.
You're chief of the fire department. You do all these other things. How do you do all this?
No white helmet, just captain.
How do you do all this?
It's just a busy day every day.
Me too. All right. Question.
I've definitely got some some attention deficit things going on because I can't sit still. And summer is my favorite season. So if I'm off and it's hot, I'm on the lake. And if I'm not on the lake, I'm underwater at the mine. So I'm always doing something. I can't sit still.
I'll tell you that I do the same thing. I got a little bit of that AD going on too. I just use my what I got going on. I try to use all my powers for good, right? Pay it forward. All right, here's a question for you. So today it was announced that there will be no murder charges in the Breonna Taylor killing. I think there's going to be protests on that, etc. What are your thoughts?
Well, in my opinion, and like I said, I have not reviewed the entire case. Definitely didn't review any testimony or courtroom appearance or anything like that. But I think a lot is got to be said for the trust in the law. And as an attorney, I would hope that you would agree that the court system is definitely flawed in some aspects, but we also have to believe in the court system and the sanctity of the law. So, hey, Jack, we'll see you. Are you going to practice? Yeah. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. Sorry, that's my adopted kid. Without knowing the laws in Tennessee, I do know that there is evidence that Miss Taylor was managing the funds and the books and being basically an accountant for, I believe is it her boyfriend that was suspected of being a drug dealer?
Yep.
Yeah. So I've heard and I've seen some briefs through the information, and I spent 5 years undercover with the Highway Patrol Narcotics Unit here in the Mineral area. But I mean, we made solid cases. I had thousands of drug buys, and not to toot my own horn, but now a lot of plea bargains, but I've never lost a case for anything that I've done. But I mean, most narcotics investigations are pretty solid. We surmount a tremendous amount of evidence against people because we want to do our job, and as a prosecutor or defense attorney, we want you to work hard at your job. So I think that if the officers were not in fear for their life or somebody else's, then maybe that was a wrong decision to shoot her. I don't know the entire situation. But I will tell you that within the state of Missouri, the Missouri revised statutes do allow for anyone who has committed, is about to commit, or convicted felon, the police and, a citizen, as a matter of fact, they all have a right to shoot a felon, and whether they're armed or not. So I don't know what the law is in Tennessee. Now, that law does not in Missouri preclude you from any Fourth or 14th Amendment rights as civil liberties by any means. But as far as a criminal charge, there is no criminal charge for that. So she did commit some felonies. Whether or not she was aggressive, I don't know. But, I'm not going to argue with the court's decision either way. I don't agree with the Minneapolis decision by any means with what was going on there. I think the court of social media convicted those officers before anything was done. I will say that as a... Let me turn this off.
You have an incoming call.
Just like I said, my opinion, I would say that as a former paramedic and firefighter and a police officer, I have used lateral vascular neck restraints against a lot of suspects that I've been in fights with. And we were trained that at the moment that they lose consciousness, you immediately do some type of revival or some type of life-saving technique. And I don't feel that the officers in Minneapolis did that. So I'm not I do have...
They kept the nickel way too long and killed him.
Yes. And I mean, in that aspect, I think they were definitely wrong. But as far as their department policy goes and the protections and liberties that they have against any libel or liability claims, their department policy covered that. They actually trained in those techniques to begin with. So
So they didn't follow their own policies.
well, they did, from what I understand, and again, I wasn't in court, but from what I understand is they actually did follow department policy for a suspect under arrest or being restrained. So I don't know.
Then you got to take your knee off the neck.
Well, they actually had, from what I understand, part of their defense policy is they actually had a lateral vascular neck restraint using control techniques with their knee in the neck. So if that's the case, I did not see this, Gary. I haven't seen their policy at all. I think it is actually in a brief, but I haven't seen it.
So Taylor, you're saying Breonna Taylor shouldn't have been shot?
I don't know. I don't know what the officers' view was. I don't know if they felt threatened. If it was me, and again with the experience that I've had and being in those shooting situations, I still am in them now, and I'm a pretty big boy, and I'm also, I also own a gun business, and I shoot as a firearms instructor. I see things a little bit differently, and I was not there, so I'm not gonna, Monday morning quarterback or second guess the police officers. But if it was me and I didn't see a gun or a knife or some type of weapon, I probably would not have shot her.
Yeah, we do one of the concerns that we hear this. There's a question I hear: should we defund the police as a police officer? Let's talk about it from your perspective. And this is a question Davey asked. What are your thoughts on this controversial topic? And I want to ask you that, but I want to change it a little bit too. And what also about national standards or having more consistency in training of these officers? Because sometimes it's really hard to be a police officer. You're making split-second decisions. It's judgment calls. You're dealing with. You don't know if and again, I'm not a police officer. You don't know if the guy walking by you is going to pass by you and be fine. You don't know if he's going to turn around and try to stick a knife in you. I mean, you have to be hyper vigilant. It's a tough job. We see these repeated every 3 months, a bad killing, mostly of a black person, other people too, where it looks like mistakes in training and mistakes on the ground. So 2 questions. What do you do about training these officers so they don't kneel on the neck too long, so they only shoot when they feel threatened, so they don't shoot somebody 7 times, with his kids in the car, versus how do you balance that? And second, what about this defund the police stuff?
Well, I think, it's hard to answer your first question without posing a question first. Is why can't people just follow the law?
Well, I hear you. They're dealing with. Your point is that these officers are dealing with people who broke the law in the first place. But
right.
Did the guy who was getting in his car with his kids, who got shot 7 times in the back, break the law? And even if you do break the law, if you're stealing a cigarette or if you're selling cigarettes in New York and you're not supposed to, that doesn't mean the police can kill you. There has to be proportionality.
Right. So with, and I don't remember what his name was, but the gentleman that was shot in the back, he is admitted to having possession of a knife. And from what I understand, again, I wasn't there, but they did see him reach for a knife in the floorboard of his car. And at that point, just because there's kids in the car, that young man put those kids and himself in that position. The police did not.
He was trying to leave. They grabbed that guy and they shot him in the back 7 times. Is that appropriate?
Well, there's no evidence that he was trying to leave. There is evidence that he was trying to grab a weapon. Right?
No.
There is. There's body cam footage that he was going for a weapon. So I haven't seen it. This is all stuff that has come out of the information center in Jefferson City. But I mean, there's no evidence that he was just peaceful leaving, especially after, if I'm not mistaken, he committed a rape and a sexual assault. So he's already committed a couple violent felonies. And that's not to say he deserves to be shot in the back.
He deserves to be shot in the back 7 times. You reach for a knife, we're going to shoot you 7 times. That's just the deal.
Well, I mean, that's the choice that he made. He forced the police officers to make the choice that they made. Had he just stopped And if he's big enough to do that crime, then he's going to face the consequences.
Yeah, but well, but so are you saying that it's appropriate for the police to shoot and kill people who do do minor things like have a knife in their car? They can say they saw them going for the knife. What about selling a cigarette? Or you go take you take a cigar out of a shop, and then you're Michael Brown. Then they catch you later, and you won't put your arms down, so they shoot you in the back. There's got to be a proportionality to this.
Well, and I'm glad you bring up
Mr.
Brown, because there is a
go around and kill everybody.
He did not, in no way, any way, shape, or form, just take a cigar. He forcefully committed a felony by beating a store clerk and made a theft, which makes it an even more violent felony within the state of Missouri. And then he beat a police officer almost to the point where he was forced to shoot him to save his own life. So there's a tremendous difference in what you're saying versus what the evidence actually shows it happened.
So, but do you get the point that you can't? Yeah, you're right. Point taken. I got it. I forget again. I don't remember we have these kids. We have white police officers killing black people so often that it's hard to remember all the facts of these cases, right?
Well, I think what you're purporting is not accurate, because there is a tremendous amount more of white people shot by white police officers than anywhere else. In fact, one of the shootings that just happened here not too long ago was a black police officer had shot a white person, and absolutely nothing going on there. But I think what we ignore a lot of too is the black community that commits murder on the other rest of the black community, that we don't protest about that at all. There's a 7-year-old little boy that was murdered in the street coming home riding a bike because he crossed the property line, and the neighbor walked up and shot him in the back of the head. A 7-year-old little boy.
Why is the defense of white? So why is the go-to argument that when people say, "Hey, African Americans get shot disproportionately by white police officers," why is the go-to argument, "Hey, white people are shot a lot too, and black people kill black people also"? Why are those the go-to arguments?
Well, I think it's the truth, and if we purport the truth, the whole truth, just like we want a totality of the circumstances if we're going to be tried on a criminal court, the media is not showing you the truth. They're showing you what they want to.
So it's a media conspiracy. Yeah, we have a media conspiracy. Is that the deal, Mr. Trump?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hey, but isn't it because you don't want to answer the question about why is there evidence or indicia of institutional racism in police forces, or that this disproportionate easier shooting of black people than white people happens? I mean, with the population levels of African Americans versus white people, it shouldn't be like that. I mean, why can't we say, you know what, there is problems with the police, and you know what, they shouldn't shoot and kill or kneel on necks and kill African Americans at the rate they're doing. We also have separate problems of black on black crime and separate problems of police shooting other people. But why don't we address that problem?
What problem are we addressing? The only problem that we're addressing is white police officers who shoot black suspects. We're not addressing white police officers shooting white suspects. We're not addressing black police officers shooting white suspects, and we're not addressing black police officers shooting black suspects. We are only addressing, in the media, in the United States, white police officers shooting black suspects who have committed a felony.
Because it's a institutional problem. It happens at a higher rate, and it's not that we don't report those other issues.
It doesn't happen. It's actually,
if you want to go march, you can go march.
But white police officers shooting black suspects does not happen. It actually is a disproportional rate, because white police officers shoot white suspects more than black suspects. Not
with the level of with the population, and not well. what do you think about this idea of, so we're not, I don't think we're going to resolve that today, but let me ask, what do you think about this idea of defund the police? And I think when people talk about defund the police, the idea that the police take too much on, we ask them to do too much. We need more social workers to handle family disputes and that other stuff. Like that shooting 7 times, that was the domestic dispute. Or we need police to do we need to have other support structures so it's not all on the police, because that's too hard a thing. What are your thoughts on that as a long-term police officer?
Well, I don't think there's any social worker that wants to run after a naked guy high on heroin who just beat his girlfriend.
So the defund the police just not hold water in any way. The ideas behind it are not, they don't hold water with you.
No, and you know what's kind of ironic is there's a story that was going around social media just yesterday, in fact, about Alyssa Milano calling the police, and she's one of the biggest defund the police supporters in Hollywood. So
People can
she
still
wants
call
to
the police, Brandon. People still can call the police. Just because they think
if
that
the police are defunded and they're not there, who are they going to call?
What?
If there's no funds and they're there, who are they going to call? Do you want vigilante justice?
Get rid of the police. It means the idea that police do too much, and let's have them solving the real problem, the real crimes, not running around worrying about whether or not someone's selling cigarettes singly on the street corner. Who cares?
It's still a crime.
Yeah, but it does. But then if you overtask them and you don't teach them that they can't kneel on people till they're dead, then what you have is situations where that happens, right?
But
and we see it.
That was in their policy.
On a black person's neck or a white person's neck.
That was in their policy that they were trained to do.
Why is that? Why is that a get out of jail free card?
I didn't say it was a get out of jail free card. I said it was in their policy for them to do.
Then
So
they're
when
super
you
liable. Then it's
When you
then what
mention
you're saying.
training,
Then what
when
you're
you
saying.
mention training, they were trained to do that.
Then
Now,
what you're saying is
as I
that
mentioned,
that's a systemic. Then what you're saying is that's even a bigger problem. It's even worse. It's a systemic problem that goes all the way to the top.
how is it a systemic problem when one person did it?
Well, you just said they were trained to do that way. That's the systemic way they're trained. If they're trained to kneel on people's necks till they're dead, that's a bigger deal than one guy doing.
Well, see, you're adding things to the equation that are not true, because you just said till they're dead. And a lateral vascular neck restraint has been pretty much abandoned by a lot of police departments in the country. Missouri State Highway Patrol doesn't do it anymore, and most municipalities don't practice restraint anymore either. So when you said trained to do it until they're dead, that is not what they're trained to do. They're trained to do it until they stop resisting, which we know that this particular person was in fact extremely high, had a different myriad of cocktail drugs in his system, and he was actively fighting the police. Now, at the point that they did not render any first aid or life-saving measures to that man, that's the point that I can't stand behind the police officer. But to sit there and say that they're trained to do it until they die is just absolutely incorrect, and it's basically a lie, because they're trained to stop.
I'm saying, if you said that your defense on the propriety of this was, well, that's where they were trained. That's the way they were trained. And my point was that means it's even worse that they're trained to do that.
They're
and
trained to control a suspect to have them stop resisting.
That's not exculpatory. It makes it worse.
He could have made the extreme adverse choice and not fought the police. He could have made the absolute extreme choice of not committing a crime, and it wouldn't have been any problem.
The error in one of the many errors in your logic is that, people get tried. They get to go get charged and tried in a court. It's not the job of the police to be the executioner. So if your argument is, hey, yeah, they killed him, but you know what? They were breaking the law. That's not the way it works, and you know very well. I don't mean to be too cute, and I am being a little too cute. But I mean, the breakdown in your logic is, well, yeah, they got shot, but they were a felon. We don't shoot people like that on the street. We don't use overt force to do that. You arrest them, you back them off. What's the urgent need to arrest somebody who's selling cigarettes to the point where you're going to kill him, or this other stuff? What's the urgent need to chase that guy down and chase him into his car and then shoot him 7 times? Who cares? What's the point of that? Let them, and so this idea that, hey, they're breaking the law so they can get shot, that's against the law, right?
So if somebody raped your wife and the police were there to arrest him and they ran away, would you not want us to go after him?
I'm not going to do the Michael Dukakis raped your wife thing. I don't want to talk about that. I'm not avoiding the question, but that's not fair to talk about my wife.
That's exactly what that young man did.
That's an under the belt. That's a below the belt shot, dude. Although I will say that you love on Facebook giving shit to my wife and saying all your crazy theories to get her all pissed off. But which is will you? You won't agree with anything else me today. Will you agree to that?
Did I try to piss your wife off?
Yeah.
No.
Am I going to get you to agree to anything
my fault
today?
she doesn't believe the truth and that she believes what's in the media. I've given her in numerous discussions evidence that she was wrong. And I think that's the other problem, Gary, is that when people are proved wrong by evidence that they don't like, they get offended. And you know what? You can prove me wrong all you want, and I'll say, okay, hey, I was wrong. It's yet to happen. So, since
when? Why do you put more credence in these bullshit Facebook stories that you spread around rather than professional news outlets that are trained to vet and trained to get the facts to people? What's the deal? Why do you?
Which professional news outlet are you referring to?
I don't know. There's a bunch of them. Every single one our president calls fake news.
Okay, so you're saying CNN has been caught in lies daily.
Daily. They're just there to spread a liberal propaganda to try to what? What's the conspiracy here?
To get rid of President Trump.
There you
They're
go.
liberal into office because for 8 years they got to do whatever they want under Obama.
Who got to go do whatever they want?
The criminal faction of the country.
So is that what happened? Okay. That's not true, right? I mean, that's not true, right?
No, it is not true. There was some law and order, but what President Obama supported.
How much does a president have to do with law and order? Law and order, it happens at the local level. It's how we as a community, and how people in Farmington, in your community, it's how much money they want to put to their police force and the standards that they hold in those. Law enforcement is local, just like prosecutors are local, right?
Sure. So, I mean, and you said it right there. It is local. Number one, there's 3 branches of government. We've forgotten that. And as a police officer, I'm only here to enforce the law. So if you want to argue with me, then there's consequences to that. And you want to fight me, there's consequences to that. It's called resisting arrest. I did not put myself in that position. You did because of the choices that you make. Not you, Gary Berger, but the person that we're trying to arrest. So if you don't like that law, you have your opportunity to go to court. You can plead not guilty and ask for a jury trial. Again, we mentioned this before about the sanctity of the law. I mean,
you don't agree that police officers many times treat white people resisting arrest different than black people?
No, I don't.
Do you agree with me? Let me ask you this. Sorry, go ahead.
Fly running around my car. That's really.
All right, let me ask you this. Would you agree with me that regardless of the race of the person, that policemen should move towards using less violence in subduing offenders?
I would absolutely love if we had the opportunity and the choice to not have any violence against any person of any race. We don't make that choice.
Here comes the but.
Go ahead.
But
what's your but?
Go ahead. But what'd you say? But Go ahead. The policemen are being forced into that choice.
We don't get to make that choice. If I said, "Hey, Gary, I pulled you over for speeding, but you got a warrant for murder. Go ahead and step out of the car. I'm going to put you in handcuffs, and you got to go to jail." And you started fighting me, and you pull out a knife. I'm going to shoot you because my life is now in danger. You have endangered my life. I feel for my life, and the only retaliation that I have to defend my life is to take your life.
Well,
let's say you don't have a knife or any weapon, and you get out, and you're tougher than me, and you start to beat me senseless, and my only recourse is to draw my serpent and pull the trigger. That's a choice that you made. I'm defending my life. That's guaranteed by the United States Constitution for both of us. Nothing that I have done to pull you over has endangered your life. So you made that choice.
I think, Brandon, when people get to the streets and march for the needless killings that we see, it's not in situations where the police officers had reasonable fear for their life. I'm going to agree with you. When officers should not lose their lives or be hurt in the line of duty. And I agree with you that they need to protect themselves. But I don't think that's what people are protesting. That's not the injustice that's bringing millions of people to the streets of America when they see the same thing. Let me ask you this. So at least I agreed with you on something.
I think we agree on a lot. We just don't agree with the facts of life.
Well, why? Maya asks, this is a good question. Maya asks, why is it that both sides believe that they know the facts and the other side's wrong?
Because one side ignores the facts.
Me? My side?
Well, just like you saying that so you changed the facts. You said, why is it a big deal? Why is it a big deal if some young man takes a cigar? You left out the fact that he severely beat another person and forcefully stole that. You left out the fact that he forcefully assaulted a police officer who was just simply trying to ask him questions and figure out what's going on and take him into custody.
But his hands were up and they shot him. So, Brandon, look, you can't shoot people who are surrendering.
They weren't.
All right. Well, what about? Do you know there's more white people and black people in America?
Yes.
I mean that's the point. Is that what is there? Someone put this. There's 200 million white people and 37 million black people. So, I mean, are there more white people who are arrested or attacked by police? Yeah, but there's also 8 times more, whatever the math is. There's 8 times more white people, so that's going to happen. It's the disproportionateness, right?
Sure, I agree that race is disproportionate between black and whites. What about Asian and whites? What about Native Americans and whites? I'm Native American. I got a Cherokee Indian Nations card in my wallet.
You and Elizabeth Warren.
Well, she's never actually shown her card. I've got mine with me. 5.3 times the number. All right. So what's the disproportionate between Native Americans and whites? What's the disproportionate number between Asians and whites?
I mean, you're right. I mean, there are. What's your point?
My point is you are being systemic now. So if you're going to be systemic between just the black population and the white population, what's the percentage of black population violent crimes versus the percentage of white population committing violent crimes?
Don't you?
Because the FBI statistics, and the last I checked, which has been about 6 months, it is tremendously higher for the black population crime, way more than it is for the white population.
There is. So I hear you. I know. I got it. And there's also, in the city of St. Louis, we're having a bad year for African Americans killing African Americans. It's gotten statewide press, and the governor just tried to interfere in local prosecutions, and we have it's an issue. But that so. What questions do you have for me? You have any questions in this area for me, or anything to throw back at me? I don't want to be the only one shooting questions at you.
No, yeah, Gary, you're fine. We came into this as friends, and we'll leave as friends because I think you and I can do that. We disagree on a lot of things, and but I want to know from you, how much can you tell me? I want to know about your Department of Corrections case. I feel as a either white or blue collar worker, however you want to call it, I want to know why when I go to work and I work over, I get paid extra. I want to know why the state of Missouri has a policy that says you're only going to get this amount of money and for injuries and stuff like that. Why, if a court has deemed them liable for whatever pay and whatever you've done, when are they going to pay your clients their money? What they have, what I should preface.
I argued the case. I argued the case on April 22nd. It's still in front of the Missouri Supreme Court. So we're waiting on that decision. I hope to have it affirmed. But we won the cases the first two. We're 2-0, but they get to appeal. So
Right.
just like other cases. But you're right. I mean, you're right on that. Do you think that, this guy, what do you think about this kid who drove all the way from Illinois to Minnesota and then killed those people, that that 17 or 18-year-old kid?
Well, here we are again at all the way. It was about a 15-minute drive. It was right across the state line. It wasn't a very far drive.
They drove there. Let's not argue about the distance. Don't you think that? What about? Do you think that the police officer corps in some areas can draw people, gun people like that, people that might have a intolerance towards darker skinned people that may be attractive to a police force? Or is that not your experience?
So we actually had.
I'm not saying it is. That is not a. I'm not implying that. I'm asking. I'm not assuming it's true.
So we actually had a Black Lives Matters protest here in Deloge, and I worked them. And the white population on the other side of the street was far worse with their slurs and everything else than the Black Lives Matter protesters. Now, I will say that during that protest, there was only 3 black males at the protest. The rest was a considerable amount of white population from our local college, some young ladies that were there that I actually had talked to, and they had said that they had gotten, I don't know how true this is just, hearsay, what I was told, that they were emailed, the college or somebody from the college had given them an email list, and they paid them to go to the protest. So again, I don't know.
Well, you heard it. That's right. It's even better than you hearing it is if you read it on Facebook.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, but this was straight from their mouths.
How many of the posts you shared do you think were written by Russian bots or the Russians for Trump?
I'd say 0. Now, if you ask me how many were written by liberal perpetuators of hate, 100%.
Is it true that cops touch the back of a pulled over vehicle to leave a fingerprint?
I don't. I touch the back of the vehicle to make sure that the trunk is shut.
Why?
Well, if that trunk's open, then the Constitution gives me the right to look, make sure there's nothing nefarious going on. That's
Good.
the door.
That's very interesting.
Now, as a side effect to that, let's say that I'm shot or killed on the side of the road, and the person says, "No, my car was never there. Now my fingerprint is on the car."
What do you think? We're almost done here. We're at an hour. I know you're going to. Where are you going? Where are you bringing your son down?
Oh, we're listing his son to soccer. He goes to English Park. His son.
Soccer practice?
Yeah. He's not he's like my adopted kid. So
good for you. I love that you're devoted father and an okay diver. Do you want me to give you more pointers the next time we dive together, buddy?
I would love to hear your pointers. I'm not kidding. Do you remember how to get to the mine?
I'll be there on Sunday, dude.
Oh, that's right. You did sign up for Sunday.
Look, I got a 2-year-old kid. I got shit to do. Hey, what do you think about? Let me ask you this: take us out 5 years down the road. Where do you think we're? And it doesn't matter who's president. Let's take it after the next presidential term. Is our country going to be more divided on these police issues and Black Lives Matter issues? Are we going to come together and agree on stuff? Are we going to get the same facts? Are you and I going to be having the same talk 5 years from now, or the same conversation at the mine, or sitting at the queue, or on Facebook?
Well, I don't know that we can actually say 5 years, because we probably will have our first female president in 5 years, which will still be a Trump, and we'll still be in the same boat that we're in. But I mean, here's the thing.
You meant to say Kamala? Is that who you meant?
Well,
my daughters all have these Kamala shirts. You need a Kamala sweatshirt for any of your kids?
No, I mean, you know what? If she gets elected, well, she won't get elected. But if Biden gets elected, then I support the election process. I don't like it. I definitely did not like Clinton. I still don't like Clinton. I didn't like Obama. But you know what? The American people made their decision, and that's a decision that we all have to live with, because that's the way it works. So I don't. I'll cast my vote, and if my candidate doesn't win, then they don't win. And at that point, the next election is up to my kids and your kids. So that's what we're in. But real quick, I'd like to go back to your into the Kenosha, Wisconsin thing. I just wanted to say that, in my opinion, I would rather people come out, voice their opinions. I don't care if you cuss and scream at me as a police officer, if you call me names. That doesn't bother me one bit. That is your constitutional right. I have the exact same. It really doesn't bother me at all. You have freedom of speech. What does bother me is it's very difficult to selectively enforce the Second Amendment of the Constitution, which I support 100% wholeheartedly. But I don't believe that one side or the other side bringing any guns to a peaceful protest ever solved anything. And if it was truly peaceful, the police would have to be there in the beginning. Now, I will say, with the protests we had in Deloge, it got heated one time, and 2 black gentlemen stepped off the curb into the street, which was illegal. And we simply went over and we just said, hey, this is illegal. You guys need to stay on the protest side where we set up the barrier. And both gentlemen were extremely apologetic. They were very nice. We talked to the crowd of what they would, this is in air quotes, the patriot side, which is not patriotism at all. But they were more mouthy to us than anybody else. So it's really irrelevant on what the Constitution says if we're not going to follow the laws. And I personally would rather not see anybody protest with any weapons at all. But unfortunately, one side has drove the other side, whether it's the left side or the right side, the black or the white side, it's still going on. And instead of stopping it, instead of putting the kibosh to it right away, we've let it go. And this is where we're at.
Don't you think that the hot rhetoric radicalizes people like that kid and gets them to drive however long with their damn AR and walk around like he's a cop wannabe? I mean, I don't know the answer. Isn't that like the worst thing that you want you're a professional policeman? You've done more training to be cool under pressure. It's hard to be cool under pressure. And isn't it your worst nightmare to see? It's like amateur day. It's like us taking out shitty divers. Isn't that wouldn't that be your worst thing, to see someone walking around a protest, some young kid not knowing, not training, walking around with an AR around his neck? Wouldn't you hate that?
I hate that it has come to that, but I love the fact that we have a right country to keep and bear. I absolutely agree with you that I hate seeing that from either a 17-year-old white male or a 17-year-old black male. I think everybody that is legal and of age to own a gun should own a gun, whether you like guns or not. I just taught a scuba class to two gentlemen from St. Louis. One guy was absolutely against guns his entire life. He came down here to Farmington to a company called Asymmetric Solutions, and him and his partner both love guns, and they were very good students in class. But he's like, I have never been taught what to do with a firearm. So he came down and learned. His partner was a big gun guy, and as far as being a police officer, he owned a marijuana dispensary here in Missouri. Fantastic people. But he's like, I just had premonitions about everything because of what I saw on TV and my parents. But when I came down and actually did the training, I love it. We go shooting all the time. So, but to say that I like to see one side or the other carrying guns in a peaceful protest, absolutely not. That's not that peaceful at all. But the issue is that one of the other protesters assaulted him and pulled a gun on him, and he defended himself, which he has that right. Should it have come to that? No. Should one side have just stayed and been peaceful? Absolutely. But that's the end result. So,
Well, one of the things, thank you. We're going to close it down and be done, but I like the commitment that you have to being part of this country, and saying, hey, whoever wins, we're going to go on. You're still going to go patrol the streets. You're still going to serve. I'm still going to, I'm engaging every day. I haven't left, since our idiot president became president 3.5 years ago. So the good thing about, regardless of either side that we're on these divisive issues, at least we're still at the table and committed to keeping our great country great.
Hey, I agree, and for the next 4 years, our country's going to get greater.
Especially after in a Biden-Harris administration. Do I still have? I haven't taken. Can I take that sticker off you put on the bottom of my tank? Will you put a Biden sticker on if he wins?
Will I put a Biden sticker on?
Yeah. Can I put one on? You won't take it off?
Well, I can put a Michael Devlin sticker on the bottom, which is pretty much the same as Joe Biden, isn't it? They're both
so what Brandon did to me, I have stickers on my tank.
Brandon didn't do it, but I know who did.
Who did it?
See you guys. I'll never tell.
You totally did it. He put a sticker on the bottom of my tank that's a Trump cutout head that glows in the dark, and I have a bunch of stickers on my tank. So every time I dive, I turn over, and people would see the bottom of my tank. And I had it on there for probably a year before I noticed, because who looks at the bottom of their tank? Is that hilarious or what?
I think it's hilarious.
So who did it?
I will tell you with 100% factual information that I did not do it.
Just like all your other facts today have been 100% factual, right?
Absolutely. Name one that's not.
I don't got the time, dude. It's already 4:08, and I've already gone 8 minutes over what I want to do. I appreciate and value your friendship, Brandon, even if you're so misguided.
Gary, I feel the same way with you. You're still the best personal injury attorney that I would ever want on my side, and you have been a tremendous help to my friends. And do you know how many people I've had call you on your own cell phone asking for advice? I can't remember.
I'm flattered. I'm blessed to have the job that I have and be in the position that I have. And I love the calls, and I take them, and I'll always know about you and your family and friends. No worries. Happy to do it. Proud to do it.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, you're a good guy. And, just because we differ on the political spectrum, we can still go out to dinner Saturday night, and I don't know that your bride would want to go out to dinner with me.
She would not. I love your bride because she always flirts with me a little bit. It's great.
She flirts with everybody but me.
I could say the same thing.
But we've been married for 19 years. I've been with that young lady since 1998. So she's probably tired of my shit too.
Yeah, she's great. And Yeah, I think in the next 4 years, what I see in 4 years, I think you can improve on your diving techniques a little bit. I'll give you some more pointers and try to get you in the water, try to get that improve your trim, your streamline.
Well, it'd be kind of nice. I switched to an OBC and sold a different one, so I've been kind of out of it. Plus, my dry suit was leaking, so that obviously throws everybody off.
Yeah, I got the same deal. Listen, buddy, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for doing this today. Thanks for driving around and being a good dad too.
Hey, Gary, I love you, bud. If you need something, you know how to get a hold of me. I appreciate everything you do. And I just want to, all the viewers, I don't know how many that you have, but I mean, I just want to say that, we banter back and forth, but at the end of the day, we're still friends. And I know for a fact that especially in diving, if something happens, you would be there for me. I'd be there for you, just like we would anybody else. And political differences are just that. They're political. We're civil about it. And I don't square off in the alley and fight over anything. But
I enjoy it. But you know what I miss? I enjoy that. I thank you, and I back at you on all those sentiments. You know what I miss too is I miss the ability to people of different political views to have talks about it where they're not all screaming and yelling. Is lost that. I mean, I used to have more conversations with. I have a lot of friends who are conservative. Talk about tax policy, talk about other policy and stuff, and now. It just doesn't happen. I think it's the fault of our president who engenders just the divisive shit rather than talking about what brings us together. Because if you end up talking about things other than race or other stuff like tax policy or other stuff, we end up being more similar than we're different. But people don't really have these conversations anymore and agree to disagree and move on without just hating each other. It's just harder and harder to do.
Sure. What do you think about that Biden-Harris tax hike of over 25%?
I think that you're exaggerating it. What do you think about Trump's deficit spending and all the bullshit? If you look at every Republican on deficit spending in the economy, these Republicans do this trickle down economic bullshit. Then they don't cut spending. They borrow it all from the bank and they kill our economy. It happens every 8 years. I'm tired of it.
I'm tired of it too, but it's kind of funny you mentioned that because where does that money initially start to spin down from when a Republican president takes office?
Well, there's a difference between tax policy and the spending powers of Congress. Listen, we don't have time to get into it anymore. We got to go up. We got to go. I got to go. I got to go home. You're already going home. I'm going to leave my office. I'll see you underwater next time, dude.
Gary, I love you, bud. I appreciate it. Have a good day. Tell your wife I said hi. Take care of your kids.
Bye.